So it came out 20 years ago?
2001, yeah. I think this year would mark 20 years of
Wow.
Spirited Away. Yep.
Dang. We're old.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second podcast of Script Insight. And in this podcast, we are going to be discussing a very renowned, popular filmmaker called Hayao Miyazaki. He is an animation film director from Japan. He's written and directed 11 feature films so far, and he's been part of many other productions in Japan. And he's probably one of the greatest animation film directors of our time. And joining me in this discussion is my dear friend Robert Pereña. Robert and I go way back. Robert and I are friends from high school, and both of us actually had our passions for cinema, and we wanted to make it a part of our careers. Robert is a lecturer at the SAE Institute in Dubai, which is a film school, and both of us have a shared love for movies, and especially movies from Hayao Miyazaki and the studio where these films are made, Studio Ghibli. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for being part of this podcast.
Thanks for having me, Akshay. It's a pleasure to do this. I haven't done a podcast before, but I think it'll be quite exciting to talk about something I really love, which is animation and Ghibli and Miyazaki. So yeah, thank you very much for having me, Akshay.
So tell me, Robert, how did you discover Miyazaki?
Really cool question. So I think the very first time I saw something that had to do with Miyazaki most likely would be because it was Spirited Away, but I wasn't really interested in it. I think during that time when I saw the posters come out, I was like, okay, it's an anime. I've seen anime before. I've seen Pokemon. There's Yu-Gi-Oh back then. There was Digimon at one point. So it was like, okay, it's just another Japanese anime. And it didn't really catch me and made me want to watch it. But the very first time I did watch a Miyazaki film, I think it was technically, which film was it again? It would be Howl's Moving Castle. That was the first time I watched one, but it also wasn't the thing that piqued my interest with Miyazaki or anything Ghibli for that matter. It would be Ponyo. I think it was in the mall many years back, and I saw this poster of this fish-looking creature in the middle of water, and there was like Ponyo in it. I was like, that looks kind of like Finding Nemo, at least in terms of the color aesthetic. But it looked interesting, and then I researched on it online, and I was like, okay, dang, the animation is it's different. You can see the whole waves made out of fish for some reason, and it just felt so weird. And I think that really piqued my interest with Ghibli specifically. And I wasn't able to watch that film during that time for some reason. I think it was either pulled out of the cinemas too early. So I just ended up being able to watch House Moving Castle in a cable television back then. So that's basically where I started my interest with Miyazaki and Ghibli films in general. So yeah.
So Ponyo, I think, was released 2008. So I
Yeah,
guess
it was around
back then,
2008.
yeah.
So it was during the time, right, where we were just peaking, and we were trying to really find our interests, and that was one of the cartoons or animations rather that really stood out for me and really made me interested in film in general as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. For me, I think I discovered much late. I'm quite a late bloomer into this. Sometimes I wish I would discovered it as a kid. That would have been mind blowing. But I discovered it back in when I was just finishing college. I think this was a friend of
Mid
mine.
2010s.
Yeah.
Like mid 2010s.
Yeah. Like around 2014, 15, I would say. I think around that time. So my friend, Howl, he was from China. He had recommended to watch this, and he had like Blu-rays of these films.
Wow.
So we would go to his house and he would play it. And I think the first film I remember watching, the first Miyazaki film was My Neighbor Totoro.
Oh, love
My
that
Neighbor
film.
Totoro, which was beautiful. And then after that, I was like, wow, this is great. This is unlike. It's so different. I mean, most of us have grown up on the Disney stuff, right? And this was like a different kind of cinema altogether. So I saw Totoro, and after Totoro, it was Spirited Away. He played that as well. So I think those were sort of what got me into it. And then since then, over the years, I've been slowly watching, whatever films I could find of his. And also for those of you watching, like those of you who are fans of Miyazaki, or who want to, or who are yet to watch his films, who are yet to discover him, uh, all the Miyazaki films are fortunately streaming on Netflix India.
I think it's still available for other Netflix places, or like other countries. It is available as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree with you in there, because there was a time when I was really interested in Miyazaki, and it was really tough to find places to watch it. Like I mentioned with Ponyo, it just disappeared off theaters, and I wasn't able to even catch it. And there will only be like specific channels on cable where you could find um, the titles from time to time, and it would be very rare to find these channels. Sometimes those channels would go off air all of a sudden as well, and it's like you'd love to talk about it with a couple of your friends, but there's only so much you can do, because back then we didn't have that much streaming. Like Netflix wasn't exactly, well, it was a thing, but it wasn't like a bigger thing like it is now, or neither as streaming for that matter. So I mean, to be fair, like back when we were watching things, like again, it would often only come by chance on cable. So yeah, if you haven't had a chance to watch it, like go watch whatever you can with it before they pull it out of Netflix as well.
That's true. That's true. So I mean, at least for the Indian viewers, it's on Netflix India. So watch it before it goes away and they update it. Like, please do watch it if you love animation, if you love anime. I'm sure you love that kind of stuff. I'm not sure about other territories, but I'm sure it's playing somewhere, online on streaming platforms. What do you feel are like the strengths of the writing of the Miyazaki films? Like Miyazaki as a writer.
Well, yeah, I think the thing that really makes it stand out for me is how he really tries to keep it true to himself, in the sense that he doesn't really try to meet the norms of everyone else, like whatever he believes in, whatever his culture was. Like I knew he grew up in a location which was fairly, if I'm not mistaken, could be fairly rural, and he really believed in nature and environmentalism, and ensuring that children were brought up in a very eager type of route without any technology or digitalization kind of digging into their minds. He really wants to keep it as like how a child would feel like whenever they see a sense, like whenever they have that sense of wonder, rather. And I think that's something he really tries to push forward. And you can kind of even see that with a lot of his films. A lot of his films have protagonists that are young children, primarily teenagers as well, or people who are coming off age, more specifically. Women in general as well, to really showcase how everyone is very much equal. And again, that sense of wonder is what I really love about it. And I think that's what I felt when I saw Ponyo as well. Like just watching the poster, just seeing the trailers, he evokes it not just in his films, but even through other pieces of media. Um, and yeah, I think that sense of wonder, I think, is the thing that really makes it stand out for me with a lot of his films. Like going back to what you mentioned about My Neighbor Totoro, when I watched, I don't think I watched it as early as I probably would have. I watched it much later. I think it was just around the time uh, before Netflix and everything else is starting to boom out. And I remember watching that film, and it was definitely about these two young kids and their sense of wonder by living in this rural community in a place where it just isn't a city. It's just full of trees. It's full of nature. They were almost scared to go in at one point. They were exploring different aspects of nature. Um, and we don't see that these days. Like whenever we feel at awe, whenever I see kids at awe, or even when I was a kid, like I was always at awe about technology. And it isn't to say that technology is bad, but it like those films in particular showcased how nature in general can be something of awe. It's something that we should really look up to, because like if you look at a tree, for example, and this might go a bit too into depth, I suppose, but if you look at a tree and how long it takes to grow, and maybe in contrast to like a phone that takes maybe a long time to make as well, it just suggests how children should really be at wonder. And or again, going back to that theme of wonder, that's what I really like about it, I suppose. I know I'm going a bit in circles here, but yeah, like that sense of wonder is what I love about the films that he's done. And it recurs in quite a lot of his films. Um, Mononoke, when the other guy comes in and sees the wonder of nature, again that has that sense of awe. In that, Howl's Moving Castle, the fact that we can see multiple locations in a variety of different places in that film, I think that really makes it have that sense of awe and wonder. Ponyo being underwater, and I think that's one of the things why I love watching underwater films as well. Like one of my projects back then was underwater, but that really inspired me to experience and really just be awestruck with the wonder of nature has within the world. So I think that's the thing that I really love about his writing overall with
Yeah,
Miyazaki. Yeah.
yeah,
And I think it comes with, in his writing, in I think most of his films, if you see the writing, he's always preaching these, not preaching, but it's subtly kept in with all these, there are these strong moral values also, because I mean adults enjoy these films. At the end of the day, it is made for kids, but um, like for example, like you said in Totoro, how I remember there's a scene where the girls, they come to the dad all crazy. Oh, we found a forest spirit, and the dad's like one of the gentlest, nicest dads you've ever seen, right? Maybe this is how you should parent the kids, like with proper affection and care and all these things. And like the dad also like teaches the kids how to respect nature. They bow down to the tree, like against a cultural thing, because I think it's maybe part of the philosophies of Japan, or philosophies of that region, where you there's spirits in nature, and nature should be protected. And I think, like you said, environmentalism is a big part of many films of his. Like Mononoke is one example you said. Then Nausicaa. Nausicaa is a big example. Nausicaa is almost like post-apocalyptic kind of, like, because they live in a place where they live in a place called the Sea of Decay. So it's toxic, and they can't. It's unlivable, and
Yeah.
like it's a big part of the story, right? And
I mean,
is
I think with environmentalism in particular, it's not just specifically about nature as well, but the environment as a whole, like people as a whole. Like I know this one isn't necessarily a Miyazaki film, but with the Grave of the Fireflies, I mean how that was based on war, and how that affected everyone else's world in general, plays such a big role, and rather very important aspect about how we should really be taking care of the world in general. And I think apart from that environmentalism aspect, the anti-war sentiments and how they really try to push forward peaceful processes as much as possible is something that he really tries to push forward. That sense of innocence, I think that's one of the reasons again why we have a lot of children in his films, to really showcase the world in the eyes of a child or a younger person, and how fresh it is and how new it is and how it should be kept as safe as possible as well. I think that's how I would probably interpret the environmentalism aspect. But I do agree with you with that, and how he really cares for those in general. Like going back, I suppose, with which film was it? Spirited Away. It was this young girl coming from that city, entering this location, and it's about culture, or rather, it does showcase how culture is back in Japan, and how if it is disrespected, that could be a terrible thing, of course. And he really tries to push that culture forward, which is quite amazing. I really like that point you mentioned about family, because I was reading through it the other time, and yes, Totoro specifically does showcase a really good father and really showcases good family values. But at the same time, he doesn't just focus solely on what a typical family would be. He's very much open to uh, a type of family that isn't the typical family you'll see. Like Howl's Moving Castle, it's a bunch of different characters living in the same roof. One's made out of fire. One is this woman who changes ages. One is a shapeshifter. One is like they all change from time to time. And it's not the typical family thing out there. But the main point that he's trying to push forward is no matter who your family might be or who they might be, who they identify as, or what they might look like and whatnot, there is always going to be some sense of home and comfort out there that you'll be able to find somehow, which is really warming, I suppose. It's like whenever I think about Miyazaki or Ghibli films, I think about Christmas and how it's just all about togetherness and coziness. So I think that's quite cool about those films in general as well.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Um, Another interesting point about his writing is like most kids' films, animated films, like even in Disney, there's always usually a conflict and an antagonist in the story, right? There's always a villain, and in his films, most of them the villains are not always painted as ultimate bad guys. There's a bit of complexity. They're not, pure evil guys. Like for example, in Princess Mononoke, there's this lady who destroys the land or mines resources from the land, and as a result pollutes it. But at the same time, she's also employing people from less privileged backgrounds. She's employing a whole team of prostitutes and lepers. And this is a kids movie, by the way. This is not even like you don't expect that in a kids film. And so it's not, so it's like she's also giving them employment, and she needs to do this as part of her job. So it's not like she's fully malicious, like, so things like that. What do you think?
No, I totally agree with you there, but how evil is portrayed, not evil, but there is some sort of humanity within them as well. Like, it's not, and this isn't to say that Sleeping Beauty is a terrible film, because it's really a cool film as well. But something like Maleficent, for example, and how she's painted as evil, at least back in the cartoons, because in the live action, I think they kind of toned it down a little bit, not a little bit, quite a lot more. But when it comes to, like, again, the antagonist, or the quote unquote antagonist in Princess Mononoke, again, there's that sense of humanity within that. And there's always, I think, with a lot of his films, like, even though there are so-called bad guys within it, there's also always some sort of redemption at one point, or there is a way for them to kind of gain back, being human again, or being a better person once again. Maybe not the same, or maybe they're not the type of good that we envision a proper good utopian person to be like, but it does showcase how we can still change despite all the changes that we have. I mean, like you mentioned, going back to Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind, full on dystopian world, but then there is a way that we can get back to normalcy somehow, or at least learn from those mistakes somehow. Yep, the messages that he pulls across isn't just in isn't just through his storytelling, but also through the mediums he tries to portray. How everything's in 2D, how he tries to keep it as traditional as possible. And although he has worked on some 3D work after at one point, like with Mononoke onwards, he still try to keeps, or rather, he still tries to keep that essence of 2D animation, the traditional movement of animation, to really showcase the fluidity that one person, or a lot of people rather, in his team can really do. That magic of animation really pops out of that. Just really amazing.
Yeah, I think he shows that despite even now, I think, working in hand drawn 2D style, he's still able to animate so beautifully, and still, I feel he can still compete with 3D.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, because not only his design and his the artistry is great, it's backed by great storytelling. So, like, that's like the 1-2 punch, right? So, and to build on the point of villains, like you said, the villains have a chance to redeem, or they're not like uh, all bad. There's another thing he also does, which is very interesting with certain characters, certain supporting characters. Like when I was watching his first film, uh, which was in 1979. 1979 was his first feature film. Castle of Cagliostro. There's It's basically about two thieves, and it's like a buddy film. Two thieves, and they try to rescue this lady from this evil sort of lord in this castle, and she's carries some ring which has great value and all. And meanwhile, the villain is mainly the guy who holds the woman hostage. Like, it's a story you've seen like in Shrek. He has to go through he has to beat the dragon to enter the castle and say rescue the princess. We've seen that in many fairy tales. So this is like one of those. So he goes to, and the villain is like this lord, who's just, he's shown as the ultimate bad guy. Uh, but there's another character who's sort of like there's an A villain. This is a B villain. There's like a second villain. This cop, I forgot the character's name. He brings a little comic relief as well. So this cop is after the protagonist because the protagonists they're all thieves. So this cop tries to make sure and get them, and somehow midway in the story, the cop is forced or compelled to join hands with the protagonist to achieve a sort of common goal. Like, they both want a similar thing. Like, the villain is changing sides for some convenience, and then it happens even in Castle in the Sky, where again a lady is this young girl is sort of wanted because she has a certain a pendant which has magical properties. A lot of it's of huge value, and the army wants it, and a group of pirates want her. So the army captures her, and there's a young boy who befriends the girl, who saves the girl, who protects her. There's a point where he has to go and save her. He takes the help of the pirates, who also initially wanted to just kidnap the girl. So it's kind of unexpected the way his storytelling moves, and it's not like we've not seen it before, but at least in animation you don't see it that often. So that's a very interesting thing he does with characters. He there's a bit of flexibility in the choices they make, which is, I think, very interesting when you're writing a story. It's not like this character has to be like that, and he's the bad guy. That's his role. That's what he's gonna play. Not really. It depends on the story. Like,
I think going back to that thing you mentioned about characters, like, I totally agree with how the characters or the main characters really stand out and how they have so much more depth in them. But I also want to really applaud all the side characters that they have in the films, or even like those other material, maybe not material, I suppose, but other smaller pieces of the puzzle that he kind of puts them in. Like, for example, the Kodama in Princess Mononoke, which is essentially just those small little spirits with white heads and have like eyes, and they just suddenly shake their heads and whatnot. Like, there's so much charm in those pieces into that it really adds to the story, I think. And sure, it may not necessarily carry forward the story as much, or maybe they do it in their own way, but it really showcases how much detail he puts to each and every character that he really thinks of. Like, even those dust mites in Spirited Away, or I think they were also there in which one was it again? And Totoro, or maybe they just looked similar, and maybe I've forgotten at this point. But again, those small elements that you might just take for granted, they're very iconic as well, and they still they really pique your interest so much. Like, going back, I suppose, to Spirited Away, the amount of characters that you find in that bathhouse, just detailed, so detailed. Like, you have to pause and pause on the frame, and there's so much artwork in it. Like, every single frame is such a painting that you can really analyze. And yeah, like, and how human, again, and or rather how realistic they almost feel like. Maybe not realistic in the sense that they look like they're real and they fit the uncanny valley, rather, but you can, I don't know, there's just that magical feeling that you can somehow connect to them. Somehow you can really like how visually vibrant those things are. Like, I really I like how they are. I don't know really how to put it in, but again, that combining the visual aesthetic and the details that he really puts in based on the themes that he has. Again, the Japanese culture and Spirited Away. Like that's really cool, and I quite like that about his films as well.
Yeah.
And I think like as he makes more films, his storytelling and his artwork gets more detailed and more subtle. Like,
That's
like if
interesting. Detailed and more subtle.
I feel, I mean, because I've seen his first film, and I've seen the film that he last made, uh, The Wind Rises. Uh, you can see the growth and evolution of him as an artist by watching both. Both are great. I mean, even his first one was, I think, the most like fast paced, most very adventure like. It was like uh, very entertaining. His first one was like any kid who would watch it even now would have fun watching it. And Wind Rises feels a little more mature. I feel it's more something like adults would enjoy more than kids, and it's it's more grounded. It's more, 'cause it's showing the story of a guy who is an aircraft engineer in Japan, and this is back in, I think, the 40s, 30s, 40s, that World War II era, and he's building planes, and uh, so it's sort of like a family drama. He's balancing his personal life and his professional life, and it's not a very plot driven film. It's more like a slice of life movie. So like maybe it comes with, more wisdom and age, when he understands how to present stuff. uh, but I think that's something beautiful.
Yeah, do you think that it's kind of like targeting us audiences as well, in the sense that we kind of grow with him? Like we start off with a film that's so much akin for like what a child would want to go for, and as he grows old, we mature as well, and we get that sense of depth.
Yeah.
I think that's what I feel it based on what you're saying as well, and how the animation style he's trying to go for, it grows or it matures over time as well, and there gets to be a lot more depth, and it's kind of like watching Toy Story, I think. And I know it's not a Miyazaki film, which is kind of interesting, by the way, because I think in Toy Story 2 they do give him a shout out. I think there was a Totoro in Toy Story 3. I can't remember. Like one of the stuffed toys, but and again a shout
That's
out
true.
to
That's true.
Miyazaki.
They do have
It is
a,
there, right?
yeah.
There was one.
In I think
Toy
three
Story 3,
or,
by the way,
yeah,
I think it was 3.
I
I
think
also
so.
cried in 3, by the way. But I think the point I was kind of putting out with Toy Story 1, 2, and 3, I'm going to forget about 4 because I didn't like 4 as much. Don't tell anyone.
Oh,
Um,
really?
no, I didn't
Okay,
like
that's a
like
separate
3. I
that's a
think
separate
was the
topic.
definite. That's a different topic. But I think the thing with Toy Story, and going back to how that kind of is like Miyazaki's writing, is how it really targets the people who has watched or who have watched his first films, kind of, and how again it really grows over time, and you connect to it a lot more as you progress over your age. It may not be like Toy Story, where it's really about this kid and how he grows up, kind of like a Bildung Strowman type of story, because his films aren't exactly connected story-wise; they're all connected based on themes. But that's kind of what I'm getting at, and how um, again, there's just a lot of maturity as it kind of flows under, which is also quite interesting. And this is, I suppose, to be slightly of a devil's advocate here. I have to be honest. There are some films as I grew up, and as we saw the newer films from Miyazaki, there are some films where I kind of felt like, okay, it might feel a little too mature for me almost, and how it might be a bit too deep. And yes, it's targeting kids and or rather adults maybe in general, but um, there are some times where it does feel like it might be a little bit more of a slow burn, but that's what's so cool about it. It's not like the typical studio animation, which is all about let's target the kids and get them to watch as many films as much as we can and milk out the idea as much as possible. They're really trying to keep it, or rather, to really focus on that particular story, regardless of who they're trying to target. And their main thing that they really want to pull across is the message that they want to put out. Again, I think going back to with the Wind Rises, yeah, it's the anti-war sentiments that we have in there. Um, it's something that maybe a kid wouldn't really be interested in. Like, yes, maybe in regards to flight and how there's a lot of themes of flight with a lot of his films, like Porco Rosso,
Yes,
Nausicaa as well. So
many.
there's a lot of,
He
yeah,
loves.
there's
He loves
apologies
it.
for the dogs. They're gonna stop barking. But yeah, like flight, which again ties back to the sense of awe, but it's not necessarily like Nausicaa, where we follow this young kid and explore the whole thing with a small pet at her side. There's again just a lot of growth with it, which is quite yeah. It's he just really tries to stay true with his purpose or what his themes are with his films. And he isn't. It's almost kind of like how he wanted his films in the Western media to be approached. He didn't. As I remember it well, I think in one of the a documentary we watched before, he didn't want his films to be dubbed in a particular way, but rather he wanted it to be dubbed the way that it had to be written, like the way that he wrote it down and how it respects the culture. He didn't want things to be translated in a particular manner. It's kind of like in Pokemon, where when we saw onigiri in the Western media, they called it donuts. Like that doesn't make
Oh,
much sense. It's a meme in the Pokemon community and how they call rice ball or onigiri and call them in as donuts. It's weird, but that's the thing with Miyazaki. He really wanted to ensure that if it reaches Western media, it has to be true to its original self. And if you don't understand it, that's fine because that's its original culture. If you want to know more about it, then understand their culture more. So the respect that he puts in there, and the respect for his culture, he really pushes it out with his work, which is um, just really admirable.
That's true. That's true. Uh, like you mentioned, flight, right? I can. I'm telling you, he is obsessed with flight. It's like a recurring visual motif in most of his movies. Like you said, Porco Rosso, huge example. Probably the most obvious example.
I think
Where
Kiki's delivery service as well. Like even though it's not
definitely.
a plane, like a
She's
broom
flying.
of all things. Yeah,
That's
it's
true.
totally.
which again I feel Kiki is very much feel gives you the same sort of warm fuzzy feeling like Totoro. I feel it's very sweet. So yeah, Flight is in Pocoroso, Kiki's delivery service, Nausicaa, a lot of flight in Nausicaa.
Yeah, a lot of light in
Uh,
Nausicaa.
like though it's a more like sci-fi-ish, but it's definitely all these aircrafts, yeah. And even as the last film he made, Wind Rises, an aircraft engineer trying to build a good plane for unfortunately for war. So there's a lot of themes there. Uh, Even in Totoro, the those
Yeah,
those forest spirits can just fly anywhere, and the most iconic, imagery from the movie, the flying cat, the cat bus. That's anything else. I'm sure.
oh, there's a lot. Like technically a lot. Like Castle in the Sky. The fact that it's in the sky,
Yes.
even though it's not necessarily flight. Again,
Yeah.
it rather ties in again with environmentalism and how
Yes.
it's not like you're not just on the ground. Environment is also the sky and all the clouds that we see. What other films was there? Ponyo, even though it's not necessarily flight, the movement underwater
Mm.
has that feeling of it as well.
Uh,
Uh, well, Spirited Away, like there is flying.
there's
There
a
we have a
flying
dragon
dragon.
first of
There's a
all.
flying
We
dragon.
got a
Yeah.
dragon in there. What else do we have? Trying to recall. Howl's Moving Castle, even though it is technically on the ground, I think with the theme of flight in general, it's just that sense of adventure and sense of freedom and movement that you don't necessarily always get if you're just walking with your feet, and which is fine. But again, it ties it like it really all connects quite well. That sense of wonder, that environmentalism,
Yes.
um, and again, that's why it's always just you're always at awe when you watch those films and how um, I think that's the thing with animation and with live action films. And this isn't to say that live action is limited per se, because there's so much you can do now with live action. But back in the day when there was only so much you can do, 2D animation or the process of animation, there's so much fluidity that you can really take across, so much imagination that you can really compress in a short amount of time, and really make you imagine so many different things that you may have never experienced back in the day. Um, and yeah, and going back, I suppose, to the media of it all, the colors that they try to really pull out. It's like nowadays, whenever you watch films, there's almost that same type of color hint to it. It's always either orange and teal. Um, there are only maybe a couple of filmmakers maybe that really tries to pull out the color aspect of it. But here, it's just vibrance overall, and really showcases how colorful the world is, which is interesting because whenever he showcased anything um, digital or anything modern, like going back to that Iron Island in Princess Mononoke, and how that felt very dark and rusty and cold, in contrast to the greenery and the warmth and the vibrance that we have in the forest. He really tries to push that out with a lot of those films. I'm gonna go tie it to, I suppose, Grave of the Fireflies, and although it's not necessarily his film, the eerie warmth around it um, combines the fact that, one, it's a lot of fire, and there's so much fire and there's so much destruction around it, but at the same time, the story of those siblings in that movie really tries to put them together somehow, despite all the troubles that happened around it. I'm not sure if that's in Netflix, unfortunately, but it's a really cool
Yeah.
film. If you haven't heard about Grave of the Fireflies, if you want to have a nice cry, please go ahead and watch it out. Speaking of the animation, by the way, and I know I mentioned the vibrance, and I know we're mainly talking about Miyazaki, but I just want to also give a shout out to Princess Kaguya.
Ah,
Yeah, so it does have a lot of Japanese culture in that as well, and I know it's its own tale back in Japan, but the animation style and how it felt, it's not a typical hand drawn. It is hand drawn, I suppose, but the style of painting that they really pushed across with that really showcases the respect, and again, a good throwback to the culture of Japan, um, and how. And I think I don't know when it came out, and actually it
uh,
is. Is it a Ghibli film?
it is. It
It
is
is, right? It is.
2013.
That's 2013, and 2013, who won the Academy? I remember it was nominated during that
Yeah.
time for the
Okay.
Academy. But if you think about it, it's 2013. That's like around a decade ago. And around a decade ago basically means a lot of the animated films we've watched by then would be 3D. And for it to go against a lot of these different types of animations, 3D specifically, and how you're kind of pitting it across a 2D hand painted type of thing, I think that's just really awesome. And again, I just have so much respect for all the animators and all the filmmakers in general who really try to get their hands dirty with things like loving Vincent. I know it's totally off topic now, and it's totally not a Ghibli film, but the fact that you really took that time to process it and really paint every single frame in the film showcase that dedication, and how animation in general, it is an art form, it's a style of filmmaking that really puts your hands in a very dirty mess, but it really showcases how much detail you can really pull across in filmmaking, which I just really appreciate it. I know I'm like exciting over it, but go tying it back to Miyazaki, I suppose. Like that's the thing, tradition. He really pushes it out there, the respect for tradition, which is why I don't really have much else to say about it. He's just really awesome. He's just awesome, guys. That's all I can
Yeah.
say, I think.
Though this podcast is about Miyazaki, celebrating Miyazaki, uh, you also have to give credit for the legacy he's built for not just his cinema but also his team, his studio. Like even the other founders also made great animation films. Like you said, like Isao Takahata, one of the founders of Ghibli, he made Princess Kaguya, Grave of the Fireflies, and Miyazaki's son also went on to make animation films. So I mean, Miyazaki is 80 plus now, so uh, we wish he would make 10 more films, right? But obviously, it may not be practically possible. But I think we can hope that he's built a team and legacy that will continue to uh, produce more works like these in 2D, in like how they always do. So that's the best part about Ghibli itself. It's like Ghibli itself is a brand, not just Miyazaki. His studio is
I
a
agree.
brand, and yeah, it's quite amazing.
Quick shout out also, like I know I spoke about the artistry of all of those things.
Yeah.
The music, by the way, like I know I'm pretty sure there's a lot of composers, but the one that really stands out for me with Ghibli films, Joe Hisaishi. Um, like I would always sleep to his music whenever I feel stressed in life. But he has composed the themes for Totoro. I believe he's done the one for Ponyo as well. There's a couple that he's done for Ghibli. Specifically, I think the Totoro one's one of the most popular ones. But without music, by the way, and I think this is just for film in general, music really brings out the emotion further. The type of music that Hisaishi creates, again, this really brings out that sense of wonder. And if I'm not mistaken, I haven't seen Nausicaa in a while. I don't recall there being a lot of music into that, even in Grave of the Fireflies. But I think the lack that I remember of it, I think, also suggests how, again, important the music is. Without music, it will give off that sense of eeriness or a sort of vibe to it that makes us feel uncomfortable. But by adding it in, it adds in that sense of wonder. So in other words, he uses music, or they, Ghibli rather, uses music purposefully. It's not just there because okay, we have a composer, let's sing it, and try to fit it with the story somehow. But they really tie it on with really well, which is quite amazing. And going back to the thing that you mentioned about Miyazaki and how he's 80 years old, like I'm just going through the fact that he has another film coming out soon.
Yeah.
And tying it back to what I mentioned about how you're kind of growing old with Miyazaki, I like how the title's called "How Do You Live." It's kind of like a question for us, like, how are you living?
Then
How is
this
your
is
life now that you're older?
this is his
That's what it feels
upcoming
like.
film, right? Yeah. How do you
Yeah,
live?
how do you live? Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know when it's gonna
that's.
come out. It's just to be announced, I think,
Mm,
still. But
I think it'll take a while. Yeah, uh,
mm,
yeah. His films. I mean, they are successful, right? They've gotten acclaim outside Japan. They're able to cross cultures, cross boundaries, and appeal to so many people. Like the influence of Miyazaki and Ghibli is in many other places, right? Like Pixar uh, has Miyazaki references. Simpsons made a Miyazaki
yeah, intro
tribute. Yeah,
that was cool. I really like that intro.
that's so like it shows like how the rest of the world pays close attention to what he does. It's phenomenal.
Like, what's interesting with Miyazaki is like it's not like I love Pokemon, by the way. I know it's a totally different topic again.
yeah.
But with Pokemon in particular and how they have a lot of characters within that, even though there are a couple of characters within the Miyazaki universe, like Totoro again being I think one of the most popular ones, the fact that we don't see Ghibli like in a series format, or it's not like a recurring thing, and like you mentioned, you only see it from time to time. And even though Totoro came out in 1988, and the fact that we
Mm,
still know who Totoro is and how a lot of us people who love anime and love the culture know at least Totoro really showcases how his works are just really iconic, and like they're really like yeah they're gonna stand out. The deer from Mononoke, like whenever we see a deer somewhere, or whenever it's like mentioned in a film, or like in Pokemon again, going for example, like there was a Pokemon at one point that looked like a deer and had these magical properties to it as well. They were like, oh wait, are they making Mononoke in the Pokemon game? Like, that's what it felt like. We always somehow tie it back into that, and that's how much impact Miyazaki and Ghibli films have done in the whole world. Um, and again, as a filmmaker myself, even though I'm someone who mainly edits and really likes experimenting with films, I think that's the reason why I liked experimenting with a lot of films. It's because of Miyazaki and how, and Ghibli in general, and how that sense of awe. Like whenever I make films nowadays, rather, I always want to feel that feeling of awe. I want to make me feel like I'm getting my hands dirty. I want to take my time with it. I want to feel like just a sense of wonder again coming out from whatever I try to do as much as possible. Um, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's just such an inspiration to
Yeah.
see his films come out this way.
You know why he's obsessed with flight?
Why is that?
Uh, his dad was the director of Miyazaki Airplanes, which which they manufactured parts for aircrafts for World War II.
Mm.
So I'm sure he
Which
must
totally
be.
ties in back. Yeah, it again really ties in back again to the fact that he uses his experiences with his films. I think that's why it's so tight knit, right? Um, like it's not like you mentioned, he's not cashing in whatever the popular thing is. It's all about what he really truly kind of pushes forward
Yeah.
and believes in. But what I also love about what he does is that he isn't like blatantly just putting himself in it, but rather he's putting in elements of himself in that, but at the same time, adding in all of these other elements to not necessarily cover it up, but to really add more spice into it. Like he isn't the young girl in Mononoke, neither is he the young Nausicaa, and neither is he the other persons and the other characters that he has, but he puts his own personal elements into a particular character, and adds other elements of his own personal life into it. And that's what I love about filmmaking and how you can really create a character out of your own experiences and you can create something magical out of it. Um, it doesn't have to be a typical story about you entering a room and something happens and in the ending is something else happens or whatever. But he keeps it simple, but adds in all these other wonderful elements, I think, that just really makes it really stand out somehow, um, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
Let's finish off with a final question, Robert. What is your favorite Miyazaki film from what you've seen?
Mm. So I think I spoke to you about this before, and I have a different answer against this time. You're gonna be hearing dogs barking by the way because they're saying that why you changed your answer. But no, the reason why I chose this film, I think, goes back to that very first question you asked me. What was the thing that piqued my interest? And I think I would have to choose Ponyo. It's not the perfect or the most perfect Miyazaki film out there. Like story wise, it's good. I love the sense of innocence in it. The ramen or the food in that is amazing as well. The ending, I'm a bit with. And if I was gonna focus merely on the story, I would probably pick Princess Mononoke or Nausicaa in Valley of the Wind. Mononoke mainly because it's clear cut, clean story. It really cleans everything out of the box. Whereas Nausicaa is such an epic film as well. But the reason why I'm choosing Ponyo is because, well, one, it again really piqued my interest back in the day. And without Ponyo, I wouldn't have loved all these other films that I see now. And whenever I think of Miyazaki, that's definitely the film that I always think of at first. Yes, Mononoke often comes at first as well, but with Ponyo in particular, um, that magical essence of it, the wonder of a child, the wanting to dream about becoming someone or loving someone else.
Yeah.
But if I was to choose three, then yeah, it would be Ponyo, Princess Mononoke, and Nazca and Valituin. I would have added in. I'm putting in everything in one place, I think. But the other film, I would probably put it in there if I was allowed to have a main four films to stand out for Ghibli. I would put in Spirit. What was it again? Um, Howl's Moving Castle in that other spot as well. But to be honest, all of them are good, and that's why I can't really decide as to what's the best
Yeah.
out there.
But for you, Ponyo is number one. Like
I
what in
think
terms of
I would
what blew you?
for today. For today, I'd put Ponyo.
Okay.
I would typically say Princess Mononoke or Nausicaa though, but for today, I'll be putting Ponyo
Ponyo.
because of how without it, I wouldn't have watched other Miyazaki or Ghibli films in general. How about you? What is your favorite film from Ghibli or Miyazaki? Actually,
Uh, I would say from what I've seen, my favorite film from, it's tough.
It is, right?
I would say the film that I would put in number one is Spirited Away.
Mm.
I was that movie blew me away. When I saw it for the first time, I was like, wow, I've not seen something like this before. Like this kind of animation, this kind of story, this kind of, there's a bit of the Japanese culture embedded into it, right? It's because I'm so used to watching, Disney, DreamWorks stuff, right, from the West. So it was something fresh. It was amazing. Like,
Just
Oh,
the
it is
way,
very iconic. No Face is amazing. Even the old lady gave me the creeps when I first watched it. I was like,
yeah,
okay,
they
but it was
like,
really, it's an amazing film though.
like
I
I
probably
felt
would put that in number one as well now. But it's a really good film. Like
it is,
it's
it
hard to
is.
choose.
I mean, it won the Oscar. Like it won the Oscar, it won the Golden Bear at the Berlin Film Festival. It made waves. It did really well at the box office. It came in 2001 and still, so
But
Can
Mononoke,
you
like
believe that? So it came out 20 years ago.
2001, yeah. I think this year would mark 20 years of
Wow,
Spirited Away. Yep.
dang, we're old, but that's good, but just not great. But yeah, like that's really cool. But
Yeah,
Spirited Away,
it's
I
good.
totally agree with that though.
The
Yeah,
the imagery is so brutal. Like I've not seen, like, the parents transforming into pigs.
yeah.
I'm like, whoa, 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 what's happening here? Whoa, what's going on?
And that was like in the first few minutes of the film, and we have people
yeah,
transforming to pigs all of a sudden. Like that was really cool.
It was truly escapist. It was fantasy all the way, and it was the best thing about that film is it's Japanese without pandering to a universal audience.
I think that's the thing with these films in general. Again, it's something we have never experienced before. Like we've seen a lot of films that are typical spaghetti westerns, but here we're seeing a totally different type of antagonist, a totally different type of culture that we've never seen. I think that's one of the reasons why we love going to Japan. We want to visit Japan because of how different it is from the rest of the world as well, culture-wise, and how we see things. And it, there's just so much sense. Again, I'm repeating myself with that. That sense of wonder is just really pushing that out there. And I think really, I agree with that with Spirited Away. I think it really reflected the culture really well, the magicalness of the whole thing, tradition. Like, how can you fit in tradition with magical stuff? And like they somehow married it so well together. And it really deserves all the accolades that it attained till
yeah,
now.
that's true.
So, guys, if you're still tuned in, I mean, like, thank you for watching us for this long. I'm gonna be putting in a few links to some interesting content on Miyazaki. Thank you, Robert, for sharing those links. It's sort of a small docu-series that shows his creative process. It's a sort of a behind-the-scenes film about how he works. If you are a Miyazaki fan already, let us know what movies you loved, what you like about his films. Thank you so much, Robert, for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
I had a lot of fun, and I think I got to know more insights from you about Ghibli and Miyazaki, and the different aspects of his films.
Yeah, thank you, by the way, because I don't get to speak a lot of Ghibli or animation for that matter, or anything because I don't talk a lot. But thanks a lot, actually, for having me in this podcast. It's my first time joining a podcast, so thanks for making this experience quite fun. Look forward to see more of your podcasts in the future as well.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you. That means a lot. And please, guys, if you like this podcast, please hit the like button. Do comment. Tell us what your thoughts are. Please do share this video. If there are any other Miyazaki fans out there, I'm gonna put a link to Robert's YouTube channel in the description. Please do check it out. Robert does a lot of musical content on the channel.
Yep,
And
there's
he has a
musical
lot of fun.
content in there. I also post I'll try to be posting. I'll try to post more film stuff, but I like Miyazaki. I like taking my time with it. Actually, one of my next projects is an animation project as well.
Nice.
Also akin to Miyazaki and how it's about the environmentalism, but it'll take us some time. But for now, if you guys want to enjoy musical works and random stuff, you may check out my link below if you guys want to. I have another channel, but don't put it in. It's a Pokemon channel. If you guys want to watch me do gameplays, it's in another place. Find it in your own time if you guys want to. That's cool.
Great. So, yep. Please, if you enjoy this content, please do, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be notified whenever a new video pops up. Once again, thanks a lot, Robbie. This was fun. This was great doing it with you.
Thanks a lot, Akshay. And we should do this another time, maybe a different topic. Yeah, something totally different. Maybe something that will really affect our heads a little. I don't know, something. We'll see what happens, though. We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Or let us know in the comments below, guys, if you have any other suggestions, and we'll try to give that a go.
Yeah, like, let us know if you want to, see this kind of thing again. You want to see more of this. If there's any kind of burning question or topic in movies that we can explore. So yeah, that's great. Thanks everyone. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Robert. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys next time.